Hey all, it's DeLucci. I was just curious, are we waiting for Hobart to take it over?
Maybe we are. I don't know that we're live, are we?
I am.
I thought Steve said that we weren't turned on yet. Oh,
Okay.
maybe we are. People can hear my complaints. I'm fine with that.
Good to me. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't my problem. It's yours. Thank you. Bye.
I don't think it is either. Yeah. We don't think it's live yet, Karen. Internet live. Oh, it is? We're good? Okay, then it is 2:35, February 25th, 2022. This is Dan Hobart. I'm going to call to order the Finance and Audit meeting. It's a hybrid meeting on Teams and in the main council chamber. Councilmember Perkins and I are present in person in the council chamber. Councilmember DeLucci is present via Teams. And we've got a number of additional invitees. Mr. Kidney, would you mind telling us all who's here since you've got your computer open? And so that Sheila can listen for minutes.
Yes, I'll be happy to. This is Brian Kidney, Director of Finance Administration. Also on the call is Chester Moyer with Reuben Brown. He's our independent financial auditor. Cindy Gray is the city's chief financial officer. Erica Benitez is our budget manager. Lindsay Gallman is our finance administrator in the finance department. Nancy Cooper just got promoted to a position I can't think of right now, finance expert, we'll call her. Pam Coleman is our project manager. Ron Luce is our consultant with Soft Resources who's helping us with the Munis implementation. Sam Morris is our ever-present amazing assistant to city manager. And that's it.
That's it. Okay, thank you very much. First item of business is approval of the minutes from October 22nd, 2021. Councilmember Perkins.
I'll make the motion for approval.
All right, do you have any discussion or additions or subtractions?
I do not.
Okay, well, then I'll vote to approve those, so those minutes are approved. The next item of business is the approval of minutes from January 28, 2022.
I'll move for approval.
Any corrections, additions, subtractions?
I see none.
Okay, well, then we'll approve those minutes as well. And then we move on to our number 2, the carryover business, which is our ongoing Munis implementation, which is Mr. Luce.
Excuse me, it's DeLucci first. Sorry, Dan.
Oh, that's okay.
January 22 has to be approved as of 2/25/22. Under whatever reason it is, but that was part of my note. And it won't hurt, just so everyone knows it was approved. I'm not saying it shouldn't be approved. It's just as of today, not January 28th. Thank you.
Okay, we'll show that correction. Thank you very much, council member. Now, Mr. Luce, you're on screen, my man.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to give you an update on our project. I believe that you have the project update in hand. It was sent around, so I'll go down the list. We have some staffing changes coming, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. So if our fixed asset project, at this point, it's pretty much done. We're waiting for the final reconciliation and we're ready to load it. So it's almost a business process matter to get that taken care of, and then we're ready to load. With utility billing, the AUS product, we're waiting for an upgrade. That should happen in March. There's a bunch of things that are going to happen after that, but once we get the utility billing upgraded, then we can move on with some other things. We're waiting for that. That's on the schedule for March. CityWorks integration. We did meet with, we don't have any real progress to report. We did meet with the internal support team I think that this is a really big issue, and there's a lot that could be done with the CityWorks integration. I'm going to suggest that probably not much will happen with this until after we complete the timekeeping selection, because they're very intertwined. So, yeah, there's a lot to discuss there. But so with that, I think there's not going to be much going on until we get the timekeeping selected and up and running, and then we can work on the CityWorks integration. Rebuilding the chart of accounts. Cindy and I were talking about this. This is pretty much a work in progress at this point. I believe that Cindy's target's to have all this ready for the next fiscal year. So we're gradually making changes to the chart, but it should be completed in the next few months. AP automation. This is a business policy process issue right now. We're waiting for a final analysis before we decide how much AP automation we can actually achieve. Bank reconciliation. This we're waiting for the new cashiering module, which is in the AUS that we just talked about. That's going to we're going to be upgraded in March, and then we're going to install a new cashiering module. And so we're kind of waiting for that to happen. There's some dependencies on that. Some changes right now. Our contract PM Pam Coleman, who's been with us for a little over a year, is going to be leaving. And so that's kind of a loss to the team, but we're going to carry on as best we can. I am going to be working on the timekeeping selection myself with the help of Cindy. Pam's going to help us as long as she can before she leaves. But that's kind of where we're going with this. And in effect, we're kind of winding down the Munis implementation portion. You can see the completed projects. We've completed quite a bit. That's where we're at. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Luce, absolutely. First of all, Pam, sorry, we'll miss you, and they better find somebody to help with this. That's our big threat from across the country. Okay, the big question rolling around is timekeeping, and tell me anything you know off the top of your head, whether you have companies in mind, whether you have, length of installation and integration, and just tell me what you know about it, Ron, please.
Absolutely, council member. So what I know here's what we're going to do. Pam and I already started working on this. We are going to go through, we are going to build requirements by talking to all the stakeholders at the city, all the different departments. We need to make sure we've already begun this. We have the list. We're going to collect those requirements or do interviews with all these different stakeholders. We don't want to leave anybody out. And then at that point, from those interviews, I'm going to build a formal list of key requirements for the city timekeeping. Those are requirements that are absolutely central to the operation for timekeeping at the city. They're unique requirements, things that we need to make sure we have. And then my understanding is I'll work with your purchasing team. We're going to take those requirements and then build an RFP, because I think we're going to have to go out to market for this. That's my understanding. And then issue the RFP, and then hopefully we'll get 2 or 3 responses. Honestly, I don't think there are a lot of companies that can do it. You have, as I've mentioned before, I think last time, you have a lot of complexity, even given your size, given with the union contracts and the way all of the timekeeping works and all the premiums. It's quite complex, and so I don't think there'll be a lot of vendors who can do that. From a time, I think we talked about this before. If we're beginning this now, and again, we're going to have to find someone to help replace Pam, which may slow us down a little bit, but I would hope to get in the next few months, be able to get the RFP out the door. We'll need to have the RFP out for probably 30 days would be my recommendation. Need to get that back in, review the responses, decide on who we're going to demo, go through that demo process. I would think that we would probably will be the end of summer, September, by the time we actually are ready to sign a contract with a timekeeping vendor that we've vetted, and then go on with the implementation, which could be a 6 to 9 month implementation.
Gotcha. Well, so selfishly and personally, what I can tell you what I would like to see, since we are operating like it's 1900. I would like on this next round to operate like it's 2050. So I don't know, everybody now, the basic consumer level stuff on everything has apps, has, key readers and swipers and, digital and, I mean, I would, and I don't know how Mr. Kidney feels about that, or Mr. Walker, but I would like to see as progressive and future-proof a system as we could get so that we don't get caught like this again, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we want to take our time to make sure we talk to all the stakeholders and not just pick out a couple of them, because we want to make sure we're going to work for every department. And that might have been what was difficult last time. Maybe, some of the requirements were so complex we didn't figure it out till we really looked under the hood, and even the vendor didn't know. So, yeah, we don't want to make that mistake.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
Delici again. Looking at your timeline, when are we looking at you talking to the state people?
I would like to begin that. I would say we should begin those conversations in March. Hopefully we'll get it done in March, beginning of April.
Because, poor Zach Walker has to put together a budget. So I'm just reminding you of that very important thing. And the only other important date I need is under utility billing integration, project has been put on hold until AUS has been upgraded. This is currently scheduled for, and I can't read.
Probably because you printed it. Yeah, it didn't. It's the way it's formatted. Sorry about that. Yeah, it is. It does say it in the Excel spreadsheet. It's until the end of March, but somehow it didn't paginate it right for you. Sorry about that.
March of 22?
That's
Or
correct.
should I say April?
Right now, I scheduled for the end of March, so I say it should be done by April. Pam, do you know anything about that? Is it still on the schedule? Or Cindy? Do we know?
Yeah,
Right
it
now,
is. Go ahead.
sorry, Pam. Right now, it got delayed. It was supposed to happen in February, and then it got delayed to the end of March, I believe. That's assuming all goes well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And with that, following up on that, Ron, the utility billing, does that change any of the front end or the customer experience, or is that all back end stuff?
I would suspect, I've worked with AUS before, and I would suspect it's back end.
Okay.
There should be no, the CSRs will see some change, but other than that, no.
Good deal. Councilmember Perkins?
Thank you. So back to the remarks of timekeeping, I'm in total agreement with Dan that we should be looking very much into the future, but also when we're looking at these RFQs and coming up with a company to go with, security should be like right there next to anything that else that we're doing, citing the Kronos hack in the first part of December, which my company was a part of. Unfortunately, we were transitioning out of that, so it wasn't quite as devastating, if you will, but still a global attack like that was devastating to a lot of companies, a lot of people. So whatever firm offers some of the best security as well is something we need to take a strong look at.
I absolutely agree, Councilmember. Absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments or questions for Mr. Luce or Ms. Coleman? Nope. Okay.
Wait, we got one.
No, I think Karen was waving goodbye.
Oh, no, okay. Very good.
So we appreciate that. As always, Ron, thank you very much. Do what you can for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Hobart. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, next item is, we'll go down to management analyst items, which we don't have any. We don't have a management analyst. Finance and administration items. We have a monthly financial presentation and the investment portfolio. Mr. Kidney?
Yes, the financial presentation I'm turning over to Cindy, who is our CFO, and she'll, as you know, we post these on the 15th of each month, these monthly reports. It seems like each month we add even more information on there, so I'll let her go over it, but one new report on there I think you'll appreciate is the ARP funding levels, how much has been spent year-to-date is on there too. So Cindy, you might want to point that out specifically.
Okay. Cindy Gray, CFO. And in our packet, we have the financials, including a memo. The memo pretty much highlights the things that are going on within our financials. And as you know, starting off with sales tax, we are right in line pre-COVID with sales tax, which is a good thing. So we are trending right in the last 2 years, doing very well there. Use tax, still trending very well with use tax. The charts, I did notice in January, we are slightly down from January of last year. It's not a lot, but just a little. It's the first really time I've since July of last year that we've actually are slightly under the previous year's month, but we are still trending higher. It's just this month is slightly lower than comparative to last year's January. Transient guest tax still is trending very well. We are above and have almost caught up to all of last year's receipts. So we are doing very well in the transient guest tax. Fund balance, we are all typically, you know, general fund, power and light are still, our reserve balances are slightly under our, but we are working at getting those built up. We are making some ground in both of those areas. It's just going to take some time cutting expenditures and watching our revenues. As we move forward, city clerks, fire, and finance are just slightly over budget right now at this point in time, and city clerk is mainly due to the election costs that we had to pay for in October, and it utilized 100% of their budget. So we allocate these on a percentage. So, you know, right now we are at 7 months, which is 58%. So that's how we're basing where we're at. Finance, we did a payment to Motorola that took that, utilized the 100% of that line item. So it kind of skews the numbers. It will get more in line as we get to the 12th month, because we paid for a full year and we're only at month 7. The fire, again, their main reason for being over is their minimum staffing requirements, and it's the overtime that they use to fill those positions that time. Power and light, water, and sanitary sewer are all trending very well as far as their expenditures. They're all under budget, so we're doing well there. Do want to highlight the American Recovery Plan funding. We did add a new report, and the report is based on what council has approved and also any changes that council has made along the way. So we've reallocated a couple things in October, and I have tried to be pretty specific, and I do see one of my line items did get cut off, it looks like, as well, with some of the verbiage, but it's very minor. But each one of these is designated a different category based on the ARP plan. And so that's how we are categorizing them, and having all the departments as their items come through their expenditures, they code them so that we know which line item they're going to, and then we track those, and we'll use those to report. We did officially do our first report for ARP at the end of January, and haven't heard anything back from them. So far, so good. Haven't had anything come back saying that we needed to reclassify something or something didn't qualify. So that's good so far. I'm sure they have a lot of these to go through, so we may see something going forward. But so as council makes any changes or recommendations, we will update this spreadsheet on those as well as any actual expenditures going forward.
Cindy, I have one question, Mr. Hobart.
Sure.
Do you see any additional funding coming down the line from the state or the federal level to help supplement this or addition to any of these funds?
I haven't heard of any as of right now. Doesn't mean that there aren't any. I will definitely keep my ears open and let you know. We do work with GrantScribe. They may know of some more things that are coming down. I know we are working with them on getting grants for all of the departments for various items. So there could be some money coming through there. But as far as federal, I'm not aware of any additional right now.
All right.
Councilmember, I might add to that. Cindy mentioned the firm called GrantScribe that we're utilizing. They have identified a lot of grants that are coming from the state, but they have originally were funded at the federal level through some of the ARP funding. So, for instance, there's several grant applications that we have in the pipe right now, like body-worn cameras and other type of public safety items that have come through that we're applying for through GrantScribe. It goes through the state, but it is originally from the ARP funds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me, it's DeLucci. So we can ask for ARP money, and if we get that money or not, do we still pay for getting the grant person to ask for money?
I think what Councilmember DeLucci is asking is that this grant scribe that you mentioned, what's the deal with them? Do they take a percentage of the grants that are successful?
So GrantScribe, right now, we pay a monthly fee. It's not a lot. I can't remember what it is, but what the fee that we have for them right now is they are starting to administer. So prior to the last couple of years, all the grants were decentralized. Each department kind of had their own way of dealing with grants. We're asking GrantScribe to come in and pool everything together so we have one place to go to on grants. So that is a monthly service that GrantScribe's doing for us. Then they, to apply for a grant, they have an hourly rate for the cost of applying for a grant. I think it's $160 an hour or something like that, which we felt was fairly reasonable based on the market. And then if we are successful in the grant and we ask them to do a grant administration, again, it's an hourly type fee, but that would come out of the grant funds itself. So,
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Pardon me, Cindy. Yes, I do have one actually, and I've just gotten myself a little overexcited. But on the one of the early pages on the reserve fund balances, the general fund balance is way up over what it normally is. Usually it sits like at 6 million, and it's at 8.8. So, is there any reason that would be like that? I mean, nothing exciting or new happened, right?
No.
Okay, so,
I might remind the council, we get our property tax distribution in November, December.
so that would be
So
reflected.
that increases it, and then some of our big expenditures don't happen until the spring. So that, you'll see that.
I knew it wasn't real. I just got a little excited. That's all. We haven't seen 11% of our fund balance. I haven't seen that number really. So, but we won't be there shortly. No, I don't have any further questions. Councilmember DeLucci or Perkins on this item? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Gray. Are you doing the investment portfolio as well?
I am not. That would be Brian.
There we go.
I was just going to say she's more than capable of doing that. But let me share my screen so everyone can see what I'm looking at here. I think this is it. Yep. So this is the portfolio snapshot is what our investment consultants take a look at. Again, this is just a summary of what the city is currently investing right now. We have what, quote unquote, investment account of 133.9 million at market value. Our amortized cost is 134 million. So you can see our market value is down a little bit. Again, that only assumes the 133 would be assuming if we sold it right now. If we hold investments to maturity, it'd be at the 134 million, just kind of where the market is right now. Our investment are actually down a little bit below benchmark, or actually it's a little, I'm sorry, sometimes it's a little confusing to look at. The benchmark would be a minus 89 basis points, and this last year net of fees, or this last month was minus 81 basis points. So 1% being 100 basis points, so we're down below, we've lost a little bit more than a percentage, if you will, interest income, return on the investments. At cost for the year, gross is 1.19%, 1.18 net of fees. I would ask, and I think we've talked about this last time, so this is just it's looking at these on a month-to-month, sometimes it kind of misses the forest instead of looking at the trees. And so we had scheduled for this meeting to have a quarterly investment report put together, and it's put together by our investment consultants, and it's about a 15-minute presentation. We deferred that because we also were going to go over our audit and single audit here in a little bit, so we felt time-wise that would be it would really stretch the meeting out. So we've proposed that we'd move the quarterly investment report to next month and recommend that we do it on a quarterly basis. They are much better. Well, first of all, that's what they do is investments, and they'll be the one giving the presentations. Instead of me just kind of parroting what you see on the screen, they'll actually go into a little bit more in depth and what we should be expecting and what, if we need to be talking about moving our position, long-term, short-term kind of things. It's what I meet with them on quarterly, and I just felt, why not be transparent and everyone be able to see that too? So there's nothing to hide on that. So we would recommend that we move that quarterly until next month, and you'll have a little bit better, I think a more valuable report to you. I'll follow up also, Council Member DeLucia asked last month how much we pay for this service with PFM, and they do provide, in their quarterly report, they do provide what their net of fees are. And so this column here shows what our monthly earnings are each month. So for instance, in December, we earned $115,000. Their management fee was $8,900, and it gives you our cumulative. So year to date through December, we paid $53,000. It is based on the size of our investments. So as our portfolio goes down, it would go down. As portfolio goes up, it would go up. Last year, I think for the whole year, I think we were just shy of $120,000 for the fee for them doing the investments for us. And that's why we also definitely keep track of total return based on the benchmark, because what I want to make sure that by spending $120,000, we're still receiving
above
more,
where we would have been without it.
without them, exactly.
Right. We're better off with them. Than we
rather
are
than
without
just sitting it in the bank or
right.
not having the expertise in-house. So that's the alternative. Do you take that $120,000 that we pay for them and have someone in-house to do it? I still think we're at a level that it makes sense to do this. I think they've been, for 3 years, we may be looking at this next year to go out for bid to see whether or not, I don't know whether we share that with them next month or not, but
Right.
that we go out for bid and just make sure that we're staying competitive amongst that business, and then also do a cost analysis, whether or not in-house versus outsourcing makes sense at that time. $120,000 is a lot of money, but we're also getting a better return than we would if if we weren't having it managed right now. But it's something I'm very interested in. I'm very much engaged in. So we'll keep you up to date as we go on.
So,
Go
question
ahead,
follow up
Councilmember.
with that. So with the possible market instability, would it be more wise to keep somebody who has this as a professional business working in that neck of the neighborhood?
Yes. Regardless of which way we go, we would need somebody with that expertise, whether or not that person's in the house or a quasi. In other places I've been, we've had someone who spent half their time on the investments, and then I was able to use the other half their time for other finance things. But we still had a consulting, investment consultant. The difference with this group is this is a turnkey type thing. They're literally holding this money, and they are brokering it. They're doing it day in, day out. The hybrid of that is we have someone in-house who's keeping track of the cash flows, making sure we have the cash needs we need, but then we're using a consultant that helps us. Oh, you are going to need to do investment this week. We'll go out and place those bids for you, that type of stuff. So that's what we'd be looking at. I would never recommend for the citizens' money not to have someone who really knows what they're doing on this.
Right.
I think Cindy, myself, there's a couple other people in my office that I think if they dedicate 100% of their time, they're just as good as anybody out there. But it's just one of those things. It's like, is that really worth their time to do it versus outsourcing? So,
Makes sense.
again, it's something we're always looking at. We review quarterly what we do as a business. Our finance administration review our business practices pretty much quarterly. Is this still working? Is this what we're doing? And that's when we continue coming up with different ideas and thoughts on this. And this is one that we're definitely keeping a very close eye on. This is a lot of money, very important for the safety, make sure that we don't lose money,
Right.
which is the number one priority. So this is a high priority, and that's why we have arguably probably some of the best investment advisors. It's just $120,000, is that the right price? And that's why I think we should still go out for a proposal, make sure that this is still a good price that we're paying.
And this is Delucci, one last thing. Jim Harlow, Cal Holst, financial gurus here for years and years and years. And that's what we had. They're in-house people. So when you're out looking at the vendor cost, I would like also to have an idea of what do we need in-house and what will that cost? That's all. Thanks.
That makes sense, Mr. Kidney?
Yeah, it's part of our calculation, and
Right.
in all respect of what used to be, we're making hundreds of thousands of dollars more a year than we were in the past.
Yeah.
By utilizing
Right.
this. So
Right.
it's just, again, making sure that we get the expertise in the right place.
Appreciate that, Mr. Kidney, and keep us updated on that. I'm gonna, unless Councilmember DeLucci or Perkins have an objection, let's have our quarterly investment presentation next month, and assuming that goes well, we can decide on whether we want to just keep that one at that time, or we'll, do some other version. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes
And we
sense.
could always just.
Oh, I know.
We can always put the monthly sheet on
Just
the back
in
of
there.
Cindy's report,
Yeah.
but just this, me verbally, I'm just not sure it's the value that I'm not that person to give you the most value on that report.
I completely understand that, and I appreciate that. Anything else on this item from anybody? Nope. Okay, next item is our audit presentation, which I believe is Karen DeLucci's favorite, Chester Moyer.
Councilmember Hobart, hello. Councilmember DeLucci, Councilmember Perkins, thank you. It's good to be with you.
We can't see
And,
it, Chester. Are we missing your picture?
Well, my camera is on. I'm also not seeing myself. I see myself in the corner, but I see the seats of the chambers as well as Councilmember DeLucci.
We can hear
So-
you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to share my screen. That might make that difficult. I am sharing my screen now. Are you able to see anything?
Yes.
Councilmember Hobart, are you able to see?
Yes, we can see your
Okay.
screen, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. So this is the document that I'd like to walk through for the financial audit. Again, my name is Chester, and I'm the person who's authorizes our firm's signature on the audit report for the financial audit of the City of Independence. And this is always looking backwards. So this is the audit that was for the year ended June 30th of 2021. And this is the June 30th of 2021 was the third time that we have conducted the external financial audit for the city. And I'm very pleased to report that each year we've seen progress in the performance of putting the information together for the delivery of the financial statements for the city. So I wanted that to be noted at the beginning, that that's a big picture observation from where we first were in 2019. We saw progress into 20, and we continued to see progress into 21. And I'm encouraged by the things that I've been hearing from management, as well as the continued implementation with Munis and so on, that we'll continue to see progress in the financial reporting function. So I'd like to walk through this document with you briefly. This is a summary of the results of our audit, and I'll also bring up a couple other things in addition to this document, but I'm going to highlight items from this summary that I think will be, that'll help communicate what our objectives are and so on, and be of use to you. So you engaged us to give you a report on the financial statements of the city, and along with that, we audited the financial reporting under government auditing standards as well, which is ends up having a separate deliverable along with the single audit report. And then we also have the third item here, the single audit report, which is the audit of the federal funds of the city. And our responsibility in doing that is we're auditing under generally accepted auditing standards, as well as government auditing standards, which are layered on top of the generally accepted auditing standards. Our audit is its objective is the financial reporting. You know, it is this packet here. Just showing the cover page here. This is your comprehensive annual financial report. You know, 178 pages long. The only thing in there that's ours is the audit report, which is only a couple pages. But what we're opining on is the financial information in that report. Our audit's not designed to detect immaterial items or fraud, and we're not giving an opinion on internal controls. But when we do our procedures, as a byproduct of doing those procedures, sometimes we find things, and we have an obligation to report them to you. In this area, that's what we're talking about here, is that we are required to report to you any internal control related matters that we come across as the result of our audit. And then as far as management's responsibility, these are all items that are also reflected in the representation letter. We do work very closely with management. We appreciate their cooperation in our requests. It is a big endeavor to get this project done. And again, the timeliness this year for all of the deliverables is as early as it's been in those 3 years that we've audited. So we appreciate that coordination that management has provided with us. So again, a summary then of what we did for you. On the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's a clean opinion. That's the highest level of opinion that we offer. We also issued, both of these reports can be found in the single audit report, a report on compliance and internal control that's required by government auditing standards. And then we also issued an unmodified opinion on the compliance for the single audit, the federal funds. We want to point this out again, that we have in 2019 challenges issuing the audit according to its planned timing. And in 2020, the deliverables of the financial statement were separated from the single audit. So the single audit, the federal funds audit, another way of saying it, was delivered later. And part of that reason last year is that the coronavirus relief funds were a new program, had a lot of activity, and it wasn't just your entity. There was just a tremendous amount of audit activity around doing that. But this year, the audit deliverables for the first time were both issued in December for the financial statement as well as the single audit. In the past 3 years, that was the first time they'd both been issued in December. There were no new accounting standards that were instituted of any consequence by the city. The city's financial statements, they do incorporate estimates, and we do evaluate those estimates for the reasonableness in relation to financial statements as a whole. We do have some of them listed here. Examples that you might be familiar with are like all the actuarial assumptions that are built into the loggers pension plan, the OPEB plan that the city has, and anytime there's an actuary involved in calculations with the city, we do evaluate those according to what we see with other actuarial reports with other state and local governments that we do work with. For the financial statement disclosures, honestly, they're all important, but there are a few that we think are of a little more consequence than the others. You just had a presentation on investments. So the investments and deposits footnote is significant. Your tax revenue, you got a presentation on that today. That's also significant. Your debt is often an item that comes up and is considered by the financial statement users, as well as your post-employment health benefits, has been a topic of discussion the last couple of years for the city. Another item that I think is really important to point out is that this year we had no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. We are required to report them to you if we do have them. So that would be an audit adjustment would be where we're given the trial balance and we identify a change that needs to be made, and the city makes that change based on our observation. An uncorrected misstatement would be an error that we identify in the trial balance that was presented to us that is significant enough for management to consider, but management doesn't because they don't believe it's material. We still have an obligation to point that out to you. We don't have any corrected or uncorrected misstatements to point out to you for this year. There is a new accounting standard that will impact the city some next year in June 2022. The city does have capital leases, and those capital leases will be impacted by this new standard on leases. It'll change the presentation a little bit, but that's not a relatively large area where the city is active with leases. So although this will have an impact, and I can walk you through the changes after it's completed, the changes won't be all that significant, all that consequential to the financials. One thing I've done with you in the past as well is go through our recommendations from prior years, where they came from, and talk about the current status. So on this slide, we've got two items that here that were identified during the course of our single audit work in the prior year. So if you recall, we did audit the Community Development Block Grant Program as one of the major programs. And during the course of that audit, we did identify two compliance issues that were disclosed to you in the prior year. The way single auditing works is that we don't necessarily audit the same program in the subsequent year. So this year we didn't audit a Community Development Block Grant Program, but we're still required to follow up on those items to make sure that they were resolved. So although we're not auditing that program from start to finish, we're still following up to determine that corrective action had been taken with these two reporting findings. So management was able to show us that they were following up with these reports timely this year, and that the information included on the reports was also supportable and that there was a system set up to support the information on those reports. So those are the two items from the single audit. This item was something that that didn't have a material impact on the financial statements, but we did come across it during the course of our audit that with the payroll implementation, remember this goes back to 2020, there were some balances that were owed back to the city and overpayments, and for that specific matter, the corrective action has been taken on that as well. The item that still remains open is this one, and although there's been progress, it's on this next page. I do want to talk about it. So I've mentioned that the city has made progress over the last 3 years. I still think that there's definitely still opportunity to continue to improve within the finance function, within how the work is being allocated amongst team members, and the overall let's say involvement of other people in the process. I would say the process as of June 30th of 2021 still is highly dependent on one person bringing everything together. And I want to tell you, from my opinion, she's as good as it gets from anyone that I've worked with, but it does present what we call a key person risk, that if something were to happen to that person, it would still present a burden for the city to pull things together in a similar manner. So I'm encouraging and recommending that the city continue to think about that function, how the financial statements are pulled together, and how the department works together in order to pull the financial information together. It should help with the timeliness aspect. It should help with the burdens that are on one individual person, just make their lives better, as well as provide for some security for the city in the event that something were to happen, or whether it be an intentional retirement or an illness or something that might prevent someone from being able to contribute the way they had in a prior year. And the city has presented to me that they are continuing to work on this. There has been a flow chart that I've seen that management I would presume, I don't want to speak for them, but would be able to present to you as well on the council, talking about how they continue to work on the cross training and build out of the department to make sure that there's some redundancy in terms of skill sets and not having too much put on one particular person. So that the last pages here are just an attachment of the representation letter that management signs to us at the conclusion of the audit. I also just want to show you the single audit report just so you can see it. I'm going to go all the way to the back here. The very last page is where we include in the single audit those two prior audit findings that were in the CDBG program, what they were, what those findings were, and that the corrective action was taken. So that is included in the single audit report that is uploaded to the federal government's clearinghouse website. And that's the last pages of the single audit report. The other information in the report is the summary of the information that was related to the June 30th, 2021 single audit. So that concludes my prepared remarks for the audit, the financial statement audit for the city, and be happy to take any comments or questions, of course, that any of you have as council members.
This is DeLucci for one last question.
Yes.
Can you just send me a copy of the single audit report with the date on it? You used to send, it's hard covered and it's like 12 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
Not all this that we just read. I would really love the single audit report. Thanks.
Would you
Jeff.
like? Yes, Councilmember DeLucci. Did you want it printed or
Yes.
Printed? Okay, no problem.
And I think everybody at that city council needs to see it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Chairman, with your permission, I will say, and for Councilmember DeLucci also, the comprehensive annual financial report that we did bind we put the single audit in the back of that. So at the end of that report of our normal audit financials, the single audit is in there. So we were just trying to save a little bit of time and space by binding in the actual single audit in with the financials, so it's all at one place.
And here's DeLucci saying, don't make changes. The last two have been identical to each other, and this is day 3 for me. So thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Mr. Moyer, Councilmember DeLucy? No, ma'am. All right, we'll take that. Mr. Perkins? Well, Mr. Moyer, this is certainly good news. I know you're reporting facts, so it's not as if you were, that you manipulate any of this, but it certainly is good news to hear that we have taken corrective action and have no outstanding material deficiencies, if I've used the right terminology.
Yes, that's fine. We call it material weaknesses.
Material
and significant
weakness.
Deficiencies. Yeah, so.
Very good.
But I know exactly what you're saying, and what you said is correct, yes.
Let me ask
From
you,
a financial reporting perspective, that's correct.
and I'm sorry for interrupting you there. And this is kind of related and kind of not. Has the Munis implementation helped with any of the compliance and reporting for your work?
Yes, Councilmember Hobart. We work with the reports from management, and I do feel that so we're kind of a secondary in the process, but that the individuals who work with it on the primary level are able to get us the information quicker, and it's also very clearly linked. Now, that was one of the issues we had in the first year, was the linkage between a particular account and how it was mapped into the financial statements. And that's not an issue anymore. So yes, I would say that the Munis efforts have contributed to the timeliness improving, as well as the efficiency improving overall in terms of how the information is getting to us, because we're not having to recreate the mapping, if you will, by hand or manually and recheck things. We can test the system rather than to have it to do it manually.
That's good to hear. You hinted at that maybe a bit in your report, and I was hopeful that that was the case. So that's good to hear. I have let me back up. The Stay Well Health Fund that we have.
Mm-hmm.
What does your audit consist of for that particular fund?
Sure. So the Stay Well Fund, I can get into, tell me if I'm getting too detailed, but what we give is an opinion on different opinion units within the financial statement. So you have an opinion unit on all of the financial information together. And then you have an opinion to break it down by individual major fund. Your general fund is one of your major funds. We also give an opinion on major enterprise funds. So Power and Light would be one of the major funds in the enterprise. All of the other funds that aren't major, which include your internal service funds, they're all wrapped in together as one opinion unit. And the Stay Well Fund is one of your internal service funds, because it's making charges to other funds, and those funds are paying the Stay Well Fund for basically what amounts to the insurance premiums. So our audit procedures are done at a level that encompasses not just Stay Well, but really all of those other internal service funds and non-major funds together. So we're looking at it. We do have procedures specifically over the Stay Well Fund, looking at the actuarial reports that are behind it. Your third-party administrator works, I believe, with the CBIZ, I believe, and in preparing the reports for what those end-of-year balances are. Look at the IBNR and see if it's reasonable compared to the activity. But it's not done on a level that as if it were the only thing presented in your financial statements. We would be looking at it at a lower level if that was the only thing, it is kind of getting wrapped up in with all of these other funds. So the procedures that we perform on it are kind of done up here rather than as if it was presented as a standalone opinion unit. So we are looking at the reports behind it. We are looking at the information analytically. We are seeing that the funds are being moved, from into the Staywell fund, but that's the level that's appropriate for this financial audit.
So you don't, in that process, you're not reviewing individual transactions that occur inside of the Staywell fund. It's exactly what you just described.
Councilmember Hobart, yes, I'd say that's accurate. I don't recall looking at any individual transactions or having our team do that it is done at more of the account level and the report levels that support those accounts. And even for other areas where we do look at individual accounts, Staywell, I don't recall as one of them, but we're looking at a sample at a particular point in time, again, which is appropriate for a perspective of a financial report rather than for a different objective, which may have a larger sample size or look at attributes differently than what we're looking at the attributes for.
Okay. So here's the fun follow-up that you were not expecting.
Okay.
I know accountants love surprises. Lately in our city council meetings, the term forensic audit has been thrown around. Can you tell me what a forensic audit is?
Sure. Yeah, Councilmember Hobart. A forensic audit, it's a term that's commonly used in the community. It doesn't actually have a defined term under professional standards. So, and that might not be an important distinction for the lawyers. Maybe it would be. The forensic accounting services are technically what's provided by those types of engagements. So they don't. An audit has a specific objective on which you give an opinion, and those parameters are established by the AICPA. Forensic accounting services are kind of like a consulting arrangement where the objective is more what are we trying to get at? It could be very different depending on the type of services or the type of work could be very different depending on the objective. And the purpose of it is to meet that objective. That's when we use the forensic accounting world, it's typically done to support litigation of some kind, such that and it's often done through a privileged arrangement with an attorney to keep the information within that relationship for an investigation. So it's generally pretty rigorous, enough that it would stand on its own in court and be able to be, questioned by others in court exactly what was observed and what it means. Sometimes forensic accounting services, lead to nothing, and you can keep going. If the objective is to you think something's there and you keep going, and it's sort of like there may be no end to it. You kind of have to decide where the end is for those kind of services. Whereas an audit, again, has a defined parameters. Those are set up by the AICPA, and but because of that, because of the audit services are set up by the AICPA, they don't always give the public, frankly, what the perception is of what an audit is or what forensic accounting services would be. Does that help? Forensic accounting services typically are expensive because you often, again, depending on what the objective is, you often are involving specialists, and the weight, if you will, of what is being looked at is significant because it typically is ending up in court, and it could go back many periods too, and that can create its other complexities going back periods. There are other services that accounting firms provide, other consulting services, other attest work, like an audit is attest work, that can be useful. It's just kind of marrying up what the objectives are, which would include cost and time, and then also what's the question that's trying to be answered, kind of putting all those objectives together and figuring out what the best type of service would be and who would be the best to perform it. I know you don't have an internal audit department. Sometimes internal auditors are very well adapted at doing projects of this nature that don't need to be, going into a court, but still are important for decision makers. I don't, Councilmember Hobart, I kind of hit on a few areas. Maybe you could let me know if I'm off track or if I could explain something more for you.
First of all, that's a really wonderful and detailed description. I want to thank you very much. Councilmember Perkins has a question.
So Chester, you kept saying objective when it comes to this type of accounting practice or looking under the hood with this type of terminology. So I'm assuming that if you say forensic audit of and leave it very open, then you're looking at serious time, probably serious financial monies and contracts to have a financial firm take a look at a very broad and open audit as compared to a very defined outcome-based audit. Is that my assumption?
You're exactly right. I mean, the clearer the objective is, and to the extent it can be measurable and defined, I think the happier everyone is with the results. Did something happen or not? If that's the goal, did XYZ happen or not? If you can define what that is and how far back, they'd be looking, all the parties would be happier, even including those doing the work, because they're not spending their time necessarily working in areas that aren't going to benefit that objective.
Sure.
So, but yes, the more precise and narrower the question is, I think that translates to a better engagement. If it's a more general, like, hey, we think that we just think that this could be whatever it is, could be operated more efficiently, or we just think that there might be some concern. We have some concerns over here. It just doesn't seem to be jiving like we would expect. That is the type of thing that an internal audit group could do a performance audit on. And this performance audit does have defined parameters. It's not like the AICPA, it's more like government auditing standards, but they would say, they would provide recommendations on processes as well as inefficiency operations and so on, or efficiency ideas, maybe observations that they have around inefficiencies. That performance audit work, there are firms that do that. That's just more commonly done by an in-house internal audit division. And because they are really reporting, they're understanding the nature of the business or the government in this case in a way that they can make recommendations that are useful and realistic.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
I do have a follow-up on that now that I think we've identified. So the dust up around here has been that some people want a forensic audit, which is clearly not going to be appropriate, but potentially more in line would be a performance audit of the Stay Well Fund. You're vaguely familiar with Stay Well. Is that something that you would have an internal auditor, or since we don't have one, we would hire some firm somewhere and they could come in and perform a performance audit of that fund?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, and for example, our firm doesn't really do performance audits, but there are firms that do. To be able to do performance audits, you have to have a peer review. We don't have the peer review for the performance audit. We do consulting engagements that are similar to that, but to really have a performance audit that does, again, fall within specific parameters. And what they're doing is they can provide ideas around reducing costs, things to help facilitate your decisions, but also say, we put whatever X number of hours, that was our goal. These are the things that we looked at, and these are the things that we found as a result of applying that level of effort to the fund. And it could provide some useful perspective in your role in governance over that fund.
So then the $64,000 question, which is probably not that, and I'm not binding you to anything. Any idea what a performance audit costs? Is there a range? Is there the least you would pay would be X? The most you might pay would be unlimited?
Yeah, that's probably the right range, because it boils down to the scope of the work. How many hours are you wanting somebody to put towards this, and what's the likelihood that amount of effort is going to find an outcome that's useful, to governance. So too little, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to find something that's useful. Too much is a waste, right? So
yeah,
it's just going to take some thought around the objectives and what's trying to be accomplished, and to really get the best bang for the buck there. So I would say that I don't really have a perspective other than the hourly rates that would be used, would be similar to professional firms like ours, that you take that rate and multiply it by the number of hours for the project, and the number of hours would be, again, dependent on what the objectives are, how many years back, if there are multiple years you're looking at, how many files you're looking at. Again, the sophistication, because you've got, it's not like you're tracing a dollar for a dollar somewhere. It might be you're doing some work with healthcare benefits, and actuaries and IB&Rs are involved. It may require some specialists that would be above a kind of a standard bill rate for that kind of activity.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the single audit. Thank you for your continued work for us, and thanks for letting us pick your brain a little bit on that.
Yeah, my pleasure. And Councilmember Hobart and DeLucci and Perkins, I'd be happy to talk more. If you have any questions, please, I can provide that perspective, or I can work through management if you have questions as well about what you talked about today. So
you better be
Thanks
careful.
for all your help.
You better be careful.
Okay.
Karen loves what you do, so she may call you every day from here on out.
My number, I believe, Karen, and appreciate
That's
it.
okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Moyer, gentlemen? Nope. Chester, thank you again so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
All right. Okay, next item is an ordinance adopting amendments to the fiscal year budget, which was approved by City Council ordinance, it looks like. Is this yours, Mr. Walker? Mr. Kidney?
Yes, this is mine. Let me pull this up. This is a response from this came from you. It was an excellent idea. So the city adopts its budget early part of May, June,
Yes.
for the July 1st budget. At that time, there's revenues that are unknown, or sometimes there's expenditures that are unknown. And so on a quarterly basis, the finance department brings back, hey, this is something needs to be adjusted on our budget. Many times it's grants. We'll receive a grant that we hadn't expected, or that we didn't want to budget for because we didn't know if we were going to get it. So the city typically then brings a quarterly budget adjustment to you. And then at the end of the year, does what we kind of call a cleanup that updates revenues. Hey, this is what really happened. I pushed my staff to, I don't want a big cleanup at the end of the year. I want to bring you as things are adjusted as we go along, so it's not so far back in our memory and it stays relevant. So this was ready to go to council for a budget ordinance, and under your suggestion, you had suggested that.
That's right.
Which I think is an excellent idea, that this committee takes a look at it before, so maybe it's not as confusing at the council meeting or takes time away from the council meeting. So what I have in front of you is just a list of the ordinance, what Finance Administration plans to bring forward an ordinance. And I'll just, with your permission, I'll just flip through this. I don't have a nice summary. I'll just flip through the ones that quickly, and if something catches your eye,
Absolutely.
stop me. Okay.
Yep.
So this first one, again, various grants and donations. This is in our grant fund. We received multiple grants, marketing grant for Division of Tourism. Didn't know about it. We didn't know we were going to get it for sure. So now we have it. We need to spend the money, so we budget the expenditure, recognize the revenue. The Park and Rec Tax Levy Fund has asked for appropriation for new vehicles. They feel that they have money in the fund balance that can afford take care of this. Vehicles, they're saying that due to the harsh condition of the vehicles, it doesn't make the leasing program a viable option. So this is on, again, to increase the expenditures by $124,000. And I would say, if there's any specific question for what the departmental expense is, I'm sorry, I don't really have anything other than this. But what we would do is we'd go back to the department and have something ready, add to the memo for the council agenda
Presentation to
item.
council.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next one, again, various grants, donation. PetSmart has granted money. Again, you can see
Yeah, I saw
sometimes they're
that.
very small, sometimes they're large.
Right.
For instance, right here, we have something from PetSmart for $1,200 grant, but then also we received some from the Health and Animal Services from the state of Missouri for $480,000. So again, we want to utilize those funds, and so we're asking to increase the budget expenditure by the $480,000. That is offset by the grant revenue we received. Police Use Fund, this is to increase the Police Use Fund by $968,000. And the reason for that is that the voters extended the cap from $3 million to $4 million on allowable expenditures. And what this does is just administratively does this as part of the budget, that it allows the police department budget to go, or the police use department to go up $968,000. Subsequently, because of the increase to the bucket of money that the police use funds, the amount of the waterfall then to the regular other sales tax funds will be reduced. So this amendment also will reduce our estimates for use taxes in these funds by about $385,000 because of that waterfall. Power and Light,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Before you move that from there, there's a question we're investigating right now, and money spent under the police department for supplies and overtime and all that. Will this make any difference on our investigation of it right now?
Oh, no, that shouldn't have any
Thank you.
any adjustments on that at all. This is at the revenue side, not anything with the expenditures. Power and Light, we've kept the council up to date on the Jones versus City lawsuit, and this is the class action suit
Yep.
against Power and Light. And so far, actually, through the quarter was $403,000 in additional legal expenses. I actually do anticipate that we'll be coming back to you again before that lawsuit's finally settled. So this is just allowing the Power and Light to actually expend those funds out of their budget, and they would be taking those from fund balance. Central Garage, this is part of the enterprise lease program where we sell back vehicles, and this is just the revenue coming in, and this allows us to make those expenditures.
Are we leasing more than buying?
We're trying to. It depends on the actual vehicle. If the vehicle has a net market value to the city, many times we will. So for instance, we are able to purchase through government programs for, X amount of dollar for name the vehicle. Many times we're able to sell that back for right at what we paid for it. Or because we sell it to the open market, and then and you know how vehicles are right now.
Oh, yeah.
So for instance, we'll have a lease of $50,000 for a couple vehicles. We may end up selling those vehicles back for $45,000. So the net cost to that department may only be $5,000. It's been an incredibly good program for us, but it's very specific to those type of vehicles that we know that we'll get a market. There's a market for that vehicle
Right.
once we've used it. So
Right.
we're not that's why the Park and Rec said their vehicles aren't very good for that, because they really just beat those vehicles up.
Yeah.
They're going off-road and everything. So we're not going to be able to get a good price when we sell it. So it makes more sense to hold on to those vehicles longer, not try to sell them back. So it's a really good program. Health and Animal Services. These were grants that were received into the general fund, should have gone into the health fund. So this is moving those
Okay.
funds back over there. Some more grants here. The DA task force. A lot of these grants actually come to council, and what I'm trying to do is catch them before they come to council and do the amendment at the time that they're in front of council. Some of these slip through, and these are some of the ones that slipped through.
You can do the amendment in the same item.
Sometimes we do amendments because we pass the tax by ordinance. We need to amend it by ordinance. Sometimes it would be overkill to do a council action item for a grant by ordinance, because you have the 2 readings and you want to get that grant quickly, like if there's
Gotcha.
a timing on that.
Well, of course.
So when we can, we add that in there so we don't have to do this supplemental one.
Gotcha.
Sorry, it's taking a while. Water, you see they have an emergency repair of 39th Street Reservoir for $1 million, and so they're requesting to use fund balance to make those repairs.
Is that, well, we'll have to talk about that. That's not the thing that was getting worked on by Chrysler and 39th for like a year and a half, is it? Different part of the same thing, though. but-
Yes, sir. Different part of the same thing. Uh-huh.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is, the next one is ARP revenues. We had originally $50,000 allocated to the general fund with ARP funding. The council had amended some of the ARP funds to go more towards public safety. And therefore, part of that amendment that the council passed was to reduce the amount coming to the general fund by $50,000. And so that's what again, this normally would be done at year end as a cleanup item, but again, kind of want to get it done as soon as possible. The special election that was held February 8th, 2022, cost approximately $242,000. And so this is a request from the city clerk to be able to pay that money. Just appropriation, this is for the Community Development Department. Their expenditures, actually for code enforcement, they've picked up, I believe under the council wishes to actually do more code enforcement. They're doing it. That actually costs money, and so this is what the impact of that is $90,000 for the additional code enforcement that they're doing. Municipal services, overtime costs due to the snow events, winter and cleanup events in the last spring and summer. And so that's what they're asking for here, for additional money for the emergency, or for winter cleanup.
Snow.
Snow. Again, this is Health and Animal Services. They collected some money they'd like to spend through their store. Probably in the future, we'll make sure that that is a normal thing that doesn't need to come back for an appropriation, but
Yeah, I get it, just a regular budget
it's just a
item.
regular budget item, yeah.
Yeah.
And then here are revenue estimates that we're increasing due to our investment income's doing a little bit better than what we originally thought. And so we're increasing our budget revenue for interest income by $281,000 this year. Again, reflecting that even though the interest income hasn't been good, it's been better than what we've actually projected. I'll point out that Power and Light, the reason you see the dip in 82,000 isn't because interest income's not doing well, it's because we lowered we had $20 million in, $10 million in credit, $10 million of giving or defeasing debt. So the actual amount of money in the electric fund dropped 20 million because of those, and so therefore the amount of income they can earn went down. So that's what that adjustment's for.
Gotcha.
And the Stormwater Sales Tax Fund is asking to appropriate money for for street sweepers. They originally asked, they had it budgeted to lease them. I did a cost analysis, and the savings of actually purchasing them actually turned out really well. And so they're asking for appropriation for street sweepers. And again, this was actually approved by council back in August. So the expenditure's already been approved.
Yeah,
This is just the
right.
cleanup quote to come back.
Cleanup of the budget.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I appreciate, I remember talking to you about it now. It's been a minute, but,
Yeah. And that's what we plan to have for you on March 7th for first reading, is for amending these. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's excellent, actually, because any extra understanding of it is really helpful going forward. And, I understand it's not like new, anyway. I'm not going to finish that thought because I don't know what it is. Anything out of the ordinary to either one of you gentlemen in any of these? I wouldn't think so.
Oh, no.
No,
No,
just
we wouldn't recommend it if we didn't.
run-of-the-mill business, absolutely. Councilmember DeLucci, any questions or comments on this item?
Thank you for all the information. I appreciate the knowledge.
Which is certainly much better than trying to do it during a council
It
agenda
is.
item. So
It is.
I appreciate that suggestion. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent, I appreciate that. Mr. Perkins? Nothing, Chair. Okay, well, thank you again, Mr. Kidney. That is going to be nice. Next item is future IPL refunding.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm probably doing this too much.
That's all right.
All right. Thankfully, there hasn't been anything weird pop up on the screen. I just wanted to quickly. Part of the role of this committee is to look at and understand any potential refundings. And so we had been doing that in the past kind of after the fact, but again, we're trying to get ourselves pretty set up. So I'd like to have a standing, anytime we have an upcoming refunding, I want to make sure that you're aware of it before it comes to council. And so we do have multiple ones coming forward. This, what you see in front of you is just a real quick summary of two of the IPL outstanding debt. We have the 2012A debt and the 2012F debt. They are both subject to refunding. It was a current refunding. So they had a 10 years call. That means at 2022, beginning of March, we can ask, we can pay off our bondholders. And what we plan on doing is issuing debt at a lower interest rate, taking those proceeds and paying them back. What I would point out here is currently there's $51 million outstanding for the 2012. What we plan on doing is issuing debt at a lower interest rate and having a net present value around $11.5 million for that issue. And then for the 2012F refunding, we're anticipating having a net present value of about $4.1 million. So this transaction could have up to $16 million refunding for the IPL debt service. Structure-wise, we've structured the savings across the board, so there'd be a net savings each year. You know, in prior, and I'll talk about that when we talk about event funding. Sometimes we change the debt service based on what we know what's coming up. We're still talking, you know, there'll be an item talking about new generation this coming Monday. If that gets positive feedback, we might take a look at refunding this debt around any future debt service for that service. However, the net savings is still similar. Just wanted to point that out, that there might be some tweaks to this based on if there's any plan for new generation. It's just this is going to happen next month, so probably not. So that's it on the electric refunding. Is there any questions in regard to this? You'll see a ordinance coming to you on March 7th to talk about the parameters. So what that ordinance will be on the 7th is asking the council to authorize staff to enter into a bond purchase agreement with the underwriter, but only if the interest rates are certain percentages. You're not going to,
Right.
we'd have to make sure that they're good deals and no more or no less than a certain amount. So it's what we'd call parameters, and so that's what will be coming to you on March 7th.
I'm for it. Sounds good. 16 million is a lot of money.
It does not, it's not bad.
Yeah.
The other refunding is the event center. Not sure what's going on with my font there.
Well, just give us a summary.
Yeah, so
Just give us a rundown.
I do want to say, we did have a refunding in the fall of 2011. The net impact of that was a refunding of, I believe it was $3.5 million in savings. And that debt used to be out to 2038. We were able to cut that back to 2035. So not only did we save debt service, we also cut amount of time that it's going to take to pay the debt back. So this spring, you'll have something come to council either the second meeting in March or the first one in April, and it's going to be a parameters for the next issue, the 2012 outstanding debt for the event center. Part of that transaction is we see savings up to $12 million in savings there. That's the one, you might remember we'd mentioned, we've gone and done an assessment of the facility
Yeah.
and found about $8.5 to $9 million in substantial building enhancements that will extend the life of the building. Those will come to council also at the same time, just to give you an idea of what those are, but they're major HVAC type transaction, plumbing. And the idea is use those savings, part of those savings, up to about $9 million of those savings, and utilize it in a new debt issue. But the net result, the debt service will still be lower than what it was in the original transaction.
And we'll get our building upgraded.
And we'll get the building upgraded to
Yeah.
last a few more years for the citizens.
Yeah, that's good.
Any questions?
Councilmember DeLucci? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Perkins? Questions?
Thank you very much. I'm tired. How about you guys?
Well, we're not quite done yet, but
Okay.
we're getting
No
close.
questions.
We're getting close. We're all worn out. We're getting down there. Okay, so we covered the refundings, the Staywell financials that I've asked you just to leave on there. You know, that's primarily so we stay on top of this audit issue that they raised. I have learned that Staywell, some part of the Staywell committee had an emergency meeting or last minute meeting or an unplanned meeting, some version of a meeting a week ago Wednesday, and was city staff present for that, or did either of Mr. Walker or Mr. Kidney know that took place?
So the committee, the committee is made up of city staff. So, but manager's office, I'm not sure. I know the finance administration, we weren't aware of it. I wasn't sure if the manager's office did.
Right. The resolution that created the Staywell Committee states that though not a member of the committee specifically, there will be a representative from the manager's office as staff to the committee, because that's a committee that reports directly to the city manager's office. We have designated that person as our HR manager, Jennifer Vargo. She was not made aware of that meeting in advance. That department reports up to Deputy City Manager Adam Norris, who was not made aware of that meeting, and I was not made aware of that meeting. So the answer to your question is no.
Okay, and obviously, we're not the Staywell police in this committee. My bigger issue is did something happen at that meeting which affects the audit that the council ordered? Does anybody know the answer to that?
We do not have an update as of yet from that meeting.
If you would, Mr. Walker, on behalf of the Finance and Audit Committee, could you have Mr. Norris or Ms. Vargo, whoever the appropriate person is in your office, ask that we would like to see the minutes of that meeting that no one was present at, so we can see whether or not it was affected or affected somehow that audit that's been ordered.
Correct. We will get feedback from the committee co-chairs on that and route that to this committee as well.
I sure would appreciate that. I'm not looking to use this committee as again, like I said, a policing agent of other committees, but when we're talking about audits and significant financial dollars, I think this committee should be a part of the process and should be aware of things, especially in early stages. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yes.
I have agreement with that. Very good. So we're all on the same page. Now we are very, very close. Leave of absence request.
That's mine. Since we do not have a management analyst, the management analyst typically in the past had approved or at least notified to let this council know or this committee know if there's any travel. If you recall, well, actually, that's before you were on the council, but the travel policy has that all travel has to be pre-approved. And for council employees, that would mean this committee would at least know about it or be made aware of it. In practice, that was the management analyst that would kind of see, oh, you so-and-so is going for travel, and they approve it. So we thought we just ask you as a committee, how do you want that to go forward without management analyst? We have, the only reason your city clerk is going for travel, by policy, we're not able to approve or pre-approve her travel. It's not a big deal, but we just it's just one of those things like, does this committee want to approve, or do you want to authorize someone in the manager's office to approve council travel? So
we did talk about that, Ms. Kidney, and I believe it. And Councilmember DeLucci or Perkins may have a better idea. I think that council employees, as far as expenditures go, or an extraordinary expenditure like travel, which has a limited budget, I think we should approve those. I think we should be, unless and until we get a management analyst and authorize them to have that power, I think we should be the governing body on that. Do my colleagues agree?
DeLucci does, and remember, DeLucci's the one who's going to be looking at all the money coming up on the budget where we would use it for membership and travel. And we're trying to look at where we can save money. So I don't want to make it too easy to spend money.
Very good. Mr. Perkins?
Are you suggesting that we have that in a resolution form at the council meeting for consideration, or do we have our employees just give what their possible annual travel may look like for that year and go that way, or?
Well, I think what we need to do, somebody needs to have oversight over council employees' travel. And it's not really fair to ask city staff, not that they can't be involved in the process, but it's not really fair to ask them to do it because our employees are not their employees. Mr. Walker, do you think we need to do a resolution, as a recommendation from this committee that we oversee travel? We have approval over travel expenses, or can we do it just by an agreement of the committee? What do you think?
I think a resolution would be helpful only in that you can establish precedent that way. And so as, for example, I know that this committee will have its reappointments following the seating of the new council in April. So these are 2-year terms. That way, regardless of who is occupying those seats on the committee, the precedent set that carries forward until a future council would repeal that ordinance. So it's not just bound by you all deciding here, it's bound by action of the council.
I would go ahead and make the motion that the Audit and Finance Committee be responsible for approving travel ahead of time for council employees.
How many days in advance or months?
What's normal? What's a
I guess what I would suggest, maybe in advance enough time to have it in front of this committee on your normally scheduled meeting. So you'd be able to see it and have a chance to vote on it.
Every 3 months?
No, it would be, in that case, well, right now, we're still monthly, ultimately.
Right.
Oh,
So I guess it would need, what we'd need to do is, I think, how often does emergency or last minute travel come up for folks? Is 60 days too far out? 30 days too far out?
you currently have one person that's waiting for an approval. She probably had it on there 30 days ago. They know when. I think your employees specifically have a pretty good idea. So I don't think 30 to 45, 60 days.
Really, the only thing I can think of that would constitute emergency travel is when we are asked to go to Jefferson City to testify on a piece of legislation. And typically, again, because this is impacting council employees, I would say the circumstances in which that are going to happen are going to be limited. Maybe once a legislative session, maybe, but typically, we have presently 2 contracted lobbyists and a full-time staff member who is handling legislative affairs.
Yeah,
So we're pretty well covered from that standpoint.
yeah.
So typically, the kind of travel you're going to see are going to be for conferences that are announced well in advance that would fall within the parameters you're talking about.
Then I move to approve it up to 3 months.
I'm good with that.
And it can be done within 30 days, great. It's up to 3 months.
Councilmember Perkins has seconded the motion. Anybody opposed? Nope. Motion passes. Mr. City Manager, would you mind having staff prepare a resolution to that effect?
We'll get it prepared and aim to have it on the May 7th agenda.
That'd be great. Sure appreciate it.
If I
And if
might.
we need to do, in the meantime, if our clerk needs to have that approved and she's intending to travel before then,
She is.
she is. What, do you know when the travel is?
It's March. Next
Okay.
month.
Well, so
How much?
we have a very short notice of one. What, can you give us any details at all about the
City
travel?
clerk. Yeah, I actually have it right here. And she has had it in there for a while. So this is probably, she's had it in there for about 45 days. So she had planned ahead of time. This is going to Columbia for the Missouri City Clerk Finance Officers Association. I bet that's what that means. For March 14th. Total cost, it looks like it's going to be under $200. No, $387 total estimated cost. Is for,
Move to approve.
I'd second that motion. Councilmember Perkins?
Second.
Okay, that motion carries. In the sense that we haven't passed the resolution yet, and in the sense that we don't have time to do that before her travel, Mr. City Manager, I might recommend that you prepare correspondence to the council and say what we've agreed to, that it's been recommended by Audit Finance, that we've looked at it, we recommend it, and that if any council members have objections, they need to be provided in writing, immedially.
Perfect, I will do that.
And that's how we'll deal with it short term. So Ms. Behrens can still have her trip and improve her skills and help us better. Okay, that was the last agenda item. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Nothing here.
No? Councilmember DeLucy?
Thank you so much, Mr. Perkins and Mr. Hobart. This is a big job, and you've been doing it 2 hours. Thank you.
And thank you for being with us and putting up with it. We appreciate it. That's it. The time is 4:16 p.m. February 25th, and we are adjourned.